The students from Gorlith Academy had been preparing for their xenocultural field trip to Earth for months. It was supposed to be an easy assignment to observe and document human social structures, particularly their inexplicable attachment to non-sapient creatures. This was a recurring mystery to the intergalactic community. Many species coexisted with lesser life forms, but humans, for some reason, bonded with them emotionally. It made no sense. Among the students was Xolvori, a lanky, cyan-skinned being with 4 eyes and a tendency to fidget with his study tablet. He had read every available study on human-animal relationships and still couldn't grasp why they dedicated so much of their time, energy, and resources to keeping creatures that contributed nothing to their civilization. The Gorlithian Empire valued efficiency. If something didn't serve a purpose, it was abandoned. The idea of feeding, housing, and even mourning a creature that lacked intelligence was baffling. Their instructor, Professor Ornix, a being of great patience and even greater exhaustion, led them through the streets of a human city. Observe, document, and ask questions, he instructed. But for the love of the cosmos, do not interfere. The students spread out, taking notes as they witnessed humans engaging in their daily routines. They saw humans walking their pets, feeding them, talking to them, and even this part disturbed Xolvori, the most sleeping beside them. Xolvori approached a young human woman sitting on a park bench. She was tossing tiny pieces of food into the air for a small, furry creature that leaped up and caught them in its mouth. Xolvori tilted his head. "Excuse me, human. What function does this animal serve?" The woman gave him an odd look. "Function? Yes. What does it do? Does it hunt for you? Carry things? Defend your dwelling?" The woman laughed. "This is Poppy. She's a Chihuahua." "That answers nothing." "She's my companion. She makes me happy." Xolvori's 4 eyes blinked in unison. "You obtain emotional stability from an inferior species." "Well, yeah," she scratched behind the Chihuahua's ear, and the tiny creature wiggled in delight. "She loves me, and I love her." Xolvori took a step back. Love. He tapped furiously on his study tablet. The idea of forming emotional bonds with lesser beings was something only humans did. It was a waste of cognitive energy. Further down the park, the other students were just as perplexed. One, a reptilian student named Quenex, observed a man tossing a round object. A canine bolted after it, retrieved it, and returned it to the man, who praised it with enthusiasm. "It is trained to retrieve? I suppose that is?" Something Quenex muttered, taking notes. But then the man threw the object again, and the dog, a golden-furred one this time, happily chased after it. Quenex hissed in frustration. "Why does it bring the object back if you will simply discard it again?" The man laughed. "Because he likes playing fetch. But it serves no purpose." The man shrugged. "It makes him happy, and it makes me happy." The alien students recorded their findings with mounting confusion. Every answer they received led to more questions. How did a species that mastered interstellar travel still dedicate so much of their time to inefficient, unproductive creatures? It was on their second day that they met him, Nathan Cole. Nathan was sitting outside a small cafe with a large, muscular dog resting beside him. Unlike the other pets they had seen, this one was unusually focused. Its amber eyes never left Nathan, and it carried itself with a quiet intensity that immediately drew Xolvori's attention. "Excuse me," human Xolvori said. "Your creature appears different from the others we have studied." Nathan glanced at him, then down at his dog. "Yeah, this is Titan." He gave the dog's broad head a firm pat. "He's my best friend." Xolvori sighed. Another illogical statement. Does he serve a function, or is he merely for emotional stability? Nathan smirked. "He does both." "Titan's a protector." Protector Quenex interjected. "Does he fight? Defend territory?" "If needed," Nathan said. "But his job is to keep me safe." Xolvori narrowed his eyes. "Why would you need protection?" Nathan hesitated. "I was in the military. Came back with some scars, mental and physical. Sometimes I have trouble processing things. Titan helps me stay grounded. He makes sure I don't." He paused, shaking his head. Let's just say he keeps me steady. Silvori recorded this with interest. This was different. The dog wasn't just an ornament of affection or a pointless retriever of objects, it had a role, a purpose. And then it happened. A sudden commotion erupted nearby. A man, frantic and wild-eyed, came stumbling from the street, knocking over cafe tables as he went. He had a weapon. Silvori recognized it as a crude human firearm. The students gasped, stepping back. "Everyone stay put," the man shouted, his voice shaking. "I don't want to hurt anyone, I just—" Titan moved. In an instant, the large dog placed himself between Nathan and the armed man. His posture shifted from relaxed to coiled intensity, his ears pinned back, his lips curled, revealing sharp teeth. A deep, guttural growl filled the air. The man hesitated. What the hell? Nathan placed a hand on Titan's back, but didn't hold him back. "You don't want to do this," he said calmly. Titan inched forward, his muscles taut, his eyes locked onto the man. There was no barking, no wasted movement, just an overwhelming presence that radiated danger. The man took a step back. Professor Ornix motioned for the students to stay silent, observing intently. "You don't want to make a move," Nathan said. "Trust me. He won't let you." The man glanced around, his panic rising. His grip on the weapon trembled. Titan's growl deepened, his body shifting ever so slightly. The message was clear: one wrong move, and he would strike. A tense moment passed. Then, the man threw down the weapon and bolted in the other direction. Titan didn't chase. He stayed by Nathan's side, watching until the threat was gone. The students stood in stunned silence. Silvori, for the first time in his academic life, had no words. He stared at the canine, the so-called pet, and saw something he had never considered before: loyalty, strategy, and a level of intelligence beyond mere training. Titan had read the situation, calculated the threat, and stood his ground, all for the sake of his human. That, Nathan said, scratching behind Titan's ears, is why I trust him with my life. Silvori slowly closed his study tablet. Perhaps humans weren't so irrational after all. Silvori couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind. Titan hadn't reacted like a mindless beast. He had assessed, calculated, and acted with precision. The loyalty he displayed wasn't just conditioning, it was something more. It disturbed Silvori because it didn't fit into any of his previous studies. The other students were equally shaken. Quenix, usually quick to offer a sarcastic remark, remained silent. Even Professor Ornix, who had studied countless civilizations, seemed unusually contemplative as they walked back toward their transport. "I do not understand," Silvori finally said. "That creature is not sapient. And yet it recognized the threat and neutralized it without violence. It protected its human at risk to itself." Quenix tapped on his study tablet. "I have reviewed the data we collected. If the human had been alone, the chances of him being harmed were significantly higher. The canine's presence altered the course of events." "It is beyond comprehension," another student muttered. "How does a lesser species develop such an intense bond with a dominant one?" Silvori stopped walking. "We must investigate further." Professor Ornix turned to him with a raised brow. "You wish to conduct additional studies?" "Yes," Silvori said. "Our current research does not account for what we have witnessed. This canine is more than a companion. It is something else entirely." Ornix considered him for a moment, then sighed. "Very well. But remember the guidelines: observe, do not interfere." Nathan and Titan weren't difficult to locate. The human had returned to his usual routine, walking through the park, drinking coffee at the cafe, and occasionally throwing a ball for Titan, though the dog seemed to treat it more as a security patrol than a game. Silvori approached with a newfound sense of respect. "Human Nathan." Nathan glanced up from his seat. Back again, he grinned, scratching Titan's head. "What's up?" Silvori hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "I wish to understand your bond with your protector. He is not merely a pet, is he?" Nathan nodded. "You catch on fast," explained Silvori said. Nathan leaned back in his chair. "Titan isn't just a pet, he's my service dog. He helps me deal with things. Flashbacks, anxiety, bad days. He keeps me steady. Silvori furrowed his brow. He is trained to detect when your mental state is unstable. Yeah, Nathan said. If I start panicking, he grounds me. He nudges me, distracts me, sometimes even physically blocks me from doing something dangerous. He's been trained to wake me up if I have nightmares too. Silvori's mind reeled. You are telling me this creature who does not possess higher reasoning has the ability to recognize distress and take appropriate action. Nathan smirked. That about sums it up. Quinnex, who had been listening, let out a sharp hiss. Illogical. Such behavior should not be possible without true intelligence. Nathan shrugged. Maybe intelligence isn't just about logic. Titan lifted his head, his sharp amber eyes locking onto something in the distance. A jogger had tripped on the sidewalk, hitting the ground hard. Instantly, Titan's posture shifted, ears alert, muscles tensed. He was ready to move, but when he saw the jogger get up unharmed, he relaxed. Silvori caught the change. Titan had evaluated the situation in an instant. He had made a decision. You see that, Nathan asked. He's always watching, always assessing. I don't have to tell him to do it. He just does. Silvori's mind raced with calculations. And he does all of this because of his bond with you. Nathan gave Titan a firm pat. Because he loves me. Love. There was that word again. Silvori struggled with the concept. Love was an inefficient emotion. It clouded judgment, disrupted rational thought. And yet, Titan's actions were undeniably effective. Just as Silvori was about to ask more, a commotion erupted nearby. A child's scream cut through the air. Titan's head snapped in the direction of the sound. Without hesitation, he bolted. Nathan was already moving, sprinting after him. The alien students, drawn by the disturbance, followed. Near the edge of the park, a young child had stumbled too close to the street. A vehicle was coming fast. The child was frozen, terrified. Titan reached him first. In one swift motion, the massive dog lunged forward, nudging the child backward with his powerful body. The vehicle screeched to a halt, missing Titan by inches. For a tense moment, the entire park was silent. Then, the child let out a wail, but he was unharmed. Titan stood protectively over him, panting heavily. Nathan rushed forward, checking on both of them. You okay, buddy? The child nodded through tears. Titan licked his face once before returning to Nathan's side. Silvori felt his mind fracture. This was not simple training. This was not instinct. Titan had calculated the risk, determined the priority, and acted without hesitation. He had protected a creature that wasn't even his own human. Impossible, Quinnex whispered. He could have been killed. But he acted anyway, Silvori said, his voice unsteady. Titan trotted back to Nathan, his tail wagging slightly, as if he hadn't just risked his life. Nathan knelt and pulled him into a firm hug. Good boy, he murmured. Good boy. Silvori took a slow breath. He had studied 1,000 different civilizations. He had dissected cultures, analyzed philosophies, and broken down social behaviors into logical components. But what he had just witnessed defied everything he knew. Titan was not just a pet. He was not just an animal. He was something else entirely. And for the first time in his academic career, Silvori didn't have an answer. Silvori had always believed in logic. He had built his academic career on it, dedicated his existence to understanding the structure of civilizations through cold, analytical reasoning. But Titan defied logic. The students returned to their research hub that evening, but there was no discussion, no excited analysis of human behavior like there had been before. There was only silence as they processed what they had seen. Eventually, Quinnex broke it. That creature had no obligation to protect the smaller human. Professor Ornix, who had been quiet since the incident, finally spoke. And yet, it did. Silvori stared at his study tablet, its screen filled with hastily written observations. He had documented every second of Titan's actions, his reaction speed, his assessment of danger, his execution of the rescue. But no matter how many times he examined the data, he couldn't make sense of it. It does not follow any known behavioral patterns, Xolvori muttered. The risk outweighed the reward. There was no guarantee of survival. Why did he act? Quenex, usually the most dismissive of human behavior, was unusually thoughtful. Perhaps we are applying the wrong framework. We have studied Titan as if he were an ordinary Earth creature. He is an Earth creature, Xolvori countered. Yes, Quenex admitted, but perhaps not an ordinary one. The discussion continued late into the night, but no one could form a satisfying conclusion. The next morning, Xolvori returned to the park alone. He had barely slept. The questions gnawed at him, demanding answers. Nathan was in his usual spot at the cafe, sipping coffee with Titan at his feet. The dog was calm but alert, eyes scanning the environment like a soldier on duty. Xolvori approached, his mind already forming new questions. Human Nathan, I require further clarification. Nathan smirked. Figured you'd be back. Xolvori took a seat across from him. I have spent the night analyzing Titan's actions. There are no logical explanations. He risked himself with no personal gain. Nathan set his coffee down. Yeah, that's kind of what dogs do. But why? Nathan exhaled slowly, scratching Titan's head. Because he cares. Because he's loyal. That's what makes dogs special. They don't think about whether it's worth it. They just act. Xolvori frowned. This is an advanced moral concept. It requires understanding of sacrifice, of responsibility. You are suggesting that a non-sapient creature has an inherent sense of duty. Nathan nodded. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Xolvori was about to argue when Titan suddenly stood, his body tensing. Nathan noticed immediately. What is it, buddy? Titan's ears flicked forward. A deep, low growl rumbled from his chest. Xolvori turned, following the dog's gaze. At first he saw nothing unusual, just people walking through the park, but then he noticed a man standing near the entrance. He was watching them. Nathan stiffened. I know that look. Xolvori studied the man, noting his rigid posture, the way his hands twitched at his sides. Is he a threat? Nathan didn't answer immediately. Instead, he spoke to Titan in a low voice. Stay close. Titan shifted, positioning himself between Nathan and the stranger. The growl in his throat deepened. The man hesitated. His eyes flicked to Titan, and for a moment he seemed to reconsider. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. Only when he was out of sight did Titan relax. Nathan let out a breath. He knew. Xolvori's mind raced. You are saying Titan detected hostile intent before there was any visible aggression. Nathan nodded. Dogs read body language better than we do. They sense tension, pick up on micro movements we don't even notice. Xolvori was stunned. That is not mere instinct. That is an advanced level of environmental awareness. Nathan gave Titan another pat. Yeah, and that's why he's my partner. Xolvori's study tablet felt useless in his hands. He had come here expecting to analyze, to categorize Titan's behavior into neat, logical explanations. But the more he learned, the more he realized Titan was beyond categorization. This was not mindless loyalty. This was not simple training. This was something else. Something that defied everything he knew about the divide between intelligence and instinct. Titan, a mere Earth creature, had just protected them again not with action, but with knowledge. And Xolvori had no explanation for it. Xolvori had never doubted his own knowledge before. His studies on interspecies relationships, hierarchical structures, and cognitive function had always been airtight. Every civilization he had encountered, whether insectoid strategists or aquatic philosophers, fit into predictable patterns. But Titan didn't fit. The dog's ability to sense threats before they occurred, to understand emotions beyond simple conditioning, and to act without hesitation in dangerous situations wasn't just remarkable, it was impossible. At least by every scientific standard Xolvori had known. And yet, there he was. Nathan stretched in his chair, glancing down at Titan. You look like you're having an existential crisis, he said, amused. I do not understand, Zolvori admitted. I have reviewed our interactions, studied Titan's responses, and compared them to thousands of species in the galactic archives. He possesses levels of awareness that no non-sapient creature should. Yet, according to all known studies, he should not be capable of advanced decision-making. Nathan shrugged. Maybe your studies are missing something. Zolvori's four eyes narrowed. That is, not impossible. Titan yawned and rested his head on Nathan's foot. Despite the calm moment, Zolvori couldn't ignore what had just happened. That man in the park Titan had sensed something about him long before Nathan or even Zolvori had noticed anything unusual. The dog's reaction had changed the course of events, just as it had with the armed man at the cafe and the child near the street. It was a pattern. A disturbing, undeniable pattern. I must reconsider my conclusions, Zolvori said slowly. Titan is neither an ordinary pet nor a simple service animal. He hesitated, something else entirely. Nathan smirked. Took you long enough. Zolvori ignored him. Does this extend to all canines, or is Titan an anomaly? Nathan leaned back in his chair. Dogs have been by our side for thousands of years. We bred them for all kinds of jobs, hunting, guarding, herding, but over time they became more than that. They learned to read us, to understand us. It's not just Titan dogs in general are like this, some more than others. But every good dog has that bond with their person. Zolvori processed this. You are suggesting that, over the course of your species development, canines have evolved to understand human emotions and behavior at a level that rivals sentient partnerships. Nathan nodded. Yeah, that's about right. Zolvori stared at Titan. The dog had returned to his relaxed position, but his eyes remained aware, watching, waiting. A companion, a protector, a being that placed loyalty above self-preservation. Zolvori had encountered bodyguards, mercenaries, and security forces throughout the galaxy, but they all had motives: payment, duty, survival. Titan had none of these. His actions were rooted in something deeper. Something Zolvori had overlooked. Titan didn't protect because he was ordered to. He didn't calculate whether it was logical or beneficial. He simply did. Love, Zolvori said softly. Nathan arched a brow. What? That is the missing element, Zolvori realized. Your species speaks of love in many forms: familial, romantic, platonic. But I had dismissed it as an abstract concept, an emotional impulse. Nathan nodded slowly. And Zolvori looked at Titan. But for him, love is action. Titan thumped his tail against the ground. Nathan smiled. Yeah, that's what I've been trying to tell you. Zolvori sat back, overwhelmed. He had spent years breaking down civilizations into their base components, but he had never accounted for something as unquantifiable as this. Love as instinct. Love as purpose. Love as a force that could override logic and reason, pushing a creature to act not for survival or reward, but simply because it was right. Titan wasn't just a pet. He was family. And for the first time in his academic career, Zolvori realized that maybe, just maybe, not everything in the universe needed to be understood. Some things just needed to be trusted.